Ramses is a very old archer commander, releasing probably almost 4 to 5 years ago now, and he definitely has a bit of an outdated kit. But today I'll be making a Ramses in-depth guide for anyone that is interested in possibly using him. So if you're interested in Ramses, maybe why he's not so good, if he is still even usable at all, and if you should invest in him, plus his skills, talents, and pairs, you need to stick around till the end of the video. I am just going to start off today by saying I am a little bit sick, if you couldn't tell by my voice. I mean, actually a lot a bit sick, but I am trying to get the video out. I don't like to go more than 2 days without an upload, so we're going to pump this video out anyways. It's going to be a bit of a light-hearted one just because I'm not going to have as much enthusiasm in my voice, especially with a blocked nose. To start off today though, we will go over Ramses' skills, and we'll start off with his active skill, and it's quite simple. It's a rage requirement of 1000, and then he deals additional damage factor 800 to a target troop every second for 2 seconds. So pretty much he's just going to deal 800 damage factor on his normal attacks for 2 seconds. So it's going to do it twice, so you're going to deal a total of 1600 damage factor, and you'll also reduce the target's defense by 25% for 2 seconds as well. Very average active skill. A lot of commanders just do this damage on even just passive skill slots. For example, Zulaing does it in an AoE, and his defense reduction there is quite low. It only lasts for 2 seconds, so it's really not the most amazing, but it is an okay active skill, and there are definitely worse out there. Ramses' second skill, if he's on the map, his archer units gain 40% attack. Once again, this is decent actually, it's a very good amount of attack, but there are commanders who just do this and they do it better. Like for example, Boudica Prime's going to get 30% attack, 10% march speed, and 30% defense on her second skill. So stuff like this really does show you where Ramses is being outshone a little bit. Ramses' third skill here, if this commander's troop contains only archer units, he's going to take 30% less skill damage. That is actually still really good nowadays, even in the current meta with a lot of smite commanders. So definitely this is one of his better skills. And then on top of this, if he's hit with a basic attack, 10% chance to gain another 40% attack and also 40% march speed for 3 seconds. So this skill is probably his best one, if I'm being fully honest, besides like his active skill, because it's going to give him a crazy amount of stats pretty much at all times with that skill damage reduction. And also, he's going to have a really good chance of getting away from some bad situations. I mean, gaining 40% march speed is like more than any archer commander. I think the second highest would be like Edward with like 30%, but 40% whenever you're being attacked means you're going to pretty much escape any tough situations with ease. So this is definitely his best skill, and if you were doing a Siege of Orleans KVK for example, this is a skill I would 100% snatch off Ramses and slap it on any archer commander. Zulaing will definitely benefit from it a lot. Also, Herman Prime could get a lot of value as well. So this is probably his best skill, and one that if you're looking to use him in like Siege of Orleans or whatever, I would try and level up. So if you get some free Ramsey gold heads, really we're not going to be running him on the open field, so ignore that active skill, and then just go for that Army of Amun skill, because it's probably going to be the most valuable, at least in the current meta. Ramses' fourth skill here, whenever he launches a basic attack, 10% chance to heal 500 healing factor, that's not too amazing, and then gain 40% defense. This skill is very much just luck based. It's a decent amount of defense, the healing's more of a disadvantage if we're being fully honest, so it's just an average skill. Really, he's got 2 okay skills. It'd be the active skill, and that third skill is definitely really good, but other than that, the rest of his kit is quite average. But as a quick fun fact, if you do get really lucky and you trigger everything in Ramses' kit, you're able to get a ridiculous amount of stats. You'll get 40% on this first skill here, you get another 80% plus 30% here, what is that, like 150% total right now, and then you're going to get a further 40% boost right here, so you're going to have something like 190% total stats on Ramses, which is actually ridiculously high, but the thing is most of the stats don't trigger, and they are just like percent chances to happen. So that 10% chance with a cooldown of 5 seconds, let's say you get it every 10 turns, for example, the 40% defense is really 4%, so it's not that amazing, but it can be useful if you get very lucky. So you'll notice Ramses can actually look good in the current meta if people pick and choose the best reports, but overall he's just not going to do that well, since he's not going to have that 190% stats at all times, and his active skill plus third skill here can't carry him as much as they used to. The final skill for Ramses is his expertise, and this is really just an increase on the active skill. His damage factor is now 1000 instead of 800. His defense reduction is 30% instead of 25%. And also, he gets a heal immune for 2 seconds on the target. Back in the day, this was pretty decent when you get the heal immune because no other commanders really did this. And against Zenobia's, it was alright. Other than that, though, this expertise is just decent. You're getting a pretty good amount of damage factor increase, a total of 400 over the 2 seconds, giving him a 2000 damage active skill. That is really, really good, considering that a lot of commanders nowadays have around 2300. Of course, they're going to have a lot more ways to increase their damage, and especially do consider Ramses is dealing additional damage here. It's not normal damage factor, so it's not actually affected the same way by skill damage. So when you look at it, it is somewhat of a disadvantage, but definitely it is a little bit more of a unique thing in his kit. And the debuff here, it's honestly pretty useless now. I mean, there's better commanders. If you really need a heal thing, you would just go with like a Gilgamesh. There is also one thing we should note: with the addition of Nevsky into Rise of Kingdoms, we will have noticed that our friend Ramses definitely isn't doing as good, because Nevsky's defense reduction on the active skill is just like 30 times better. It's at 45%, it lasts for 3 seconds. All you need to do is swarm with 3 troops. I mean, that's easy to do for most players. So really, when you're looking at it, Ramses' active skill, its debuff isn't as good. If it was a passive skill debuff, it'd be much better, but nowadays that just isn't the case. And even then, we've got commanders with that as a passive debuff. For example, Herman, who can reduce the defense of the target by 20% for 2 seconds. So really, that is like pretty much snatching Ramses' active skill and putting it in a passive slot. So he's definitely not as strong as he used to be, but he definitely still has an okay kit in terms of it has some debuffs in there, and then that third skill can definitely be used in some KVKs where you can take it out of his kit and put it on some newer archer commanders. As for his most optimal skills, I mean, if you're actually going to run him on the open field, which unless he gets a Mega Museum Relic, I don't think anyone's going to do, but if you are actually running him on the open field, he has to be expertise, otherwise he's going to be much too weak. But if you're looking to get the most value out of him, get that third skill leveled up so you can at least use it. And even that second skill, if you do get access to it, which I think it'll be more likely than the third skill in KVKs like Heroic Anthem, you could definitely use both of these skills as decent skills. I've also seen his fourth skill before, but honestly, if you get this inside of a, let's say, Bastion, it's not too amazing to use, and you can usually just skip it, because even if it was maxed, like I said, the healing units is honestly a massive disadvantage for a lot of commanders, and the defense is a very small amount unless you get super lucky. So this definitely isn't the most amazing kit, but that second skill and that third skill, they can both be utilized on Ramses or other commanders if you do get a little bit lucky. As a little bit of a side note here, Ramses is probably next in line to get a Museum Relic after Guan and Leo, who we know are going to release quite soon. So if I was to say a Museum Relic that Ramses could use, I mean, there are a few things we could note here. So for example, Ramses, when you look at his kit, he's missing health. I mean, he has absolutely no health in his kit. A lot of archer commanders do not have health. So if Ramses gets a bit of health, that would definitely be nice, around 10% or so. And then just a few more slightly consistent stats would definitely go a long way for Ramses. I mean, if you give him maybe a bit more defense that's a bit more consistent, he'll definitely do decent. And maybe some march speed or a normal damage reduction to keep up with some of those smite commanders. Stuff like that could bring him into the meta, and even just a simple damage factor increase could be pretty nice. So like the Dream Relic for Ramses, of course you're not going to get all those, you get around 2 stats. The Dream Relic would be around, like, let's say, within realism, like a 10% health bonus with a 10% normal damage reduction. I think that would actually be pretty decent for Ramses, and it'd be good enough for players who do have him expertise to use him a little bit more on the open field. So that's just a little bit of a pointer if anyone from Lilith is watching, or if people are just interested in a possible relic that I think he could get to actually make him meta again. Because next in line to get relics, I'm pretty sure it's Ramses and Artemisia. I think Artemisia's relic's probably going to be more important than Ramses, but he definitely could get a bit of a comeback. Granted, after we've seen the Leonidas relic, which I didn't really make a video on because I was super sick yesterday, we probably aren't going to get anything amazing. I mean, Leonidas' relic was hot garbage, if we're fully honest. And if they do the same thing with Ramses, it's just going to be the same situation. But if he gets 10% health and a 10% normal damage reduction, he would definitely be a much stronger commander. In terms of Ramses' best pairings, there are a few that can go. Of course, you've got meta commanders, Zulang, Boudica, even Henry, Ashur, and Herman. They're just all so strong that if you put them with Ramses, they'll do decently. But really, when you look at his best pairings, I'd say it's like Zulang, it's Boudica, and it's Cyrus. These 3 commanders are Ramses' top pairings, and with YSG, but he's a bit outdated. So really, it's like Zulang, Boudica, Cyrus, who can be used. The reason I say Cyrus over YSG as like a top 3 pairing is because you can actually use Cyrus in a bigger murder ball with Ramses. So if you're looking to run a Cyrus with a Ramses, you can certainly run that for like 5 or 6 Archer Marches. But with YSG, he's got much better pairings with that of Henry, Eshurbanipal, even Herman and Boudica. They're going to work much better with YSG and even Nebuchadnezzar. So I think that Cyrus really doesn't have any other good pairings other than someone like Boudica, who just has stronger pairings. So Cyrus can certainly go with Ramses. The reason they work very well, if Cyrus is a primary, he makes the target take additional damage increase as a debuff, and that means Ramses' active skill will be dealing extra 20% damage, which brings it to like, I don't know exactly how it's calculated, but it should bring it to something like a total of 2,600 or so damage factor, so it's definitely a decent pairing. Do keep in mind both Cyrus and Ramses are pretty outdated, but if you're running 5 or so Archer Marches like I said, you can definitely utilize a Cyrus, and not to mention, they've got a lot of extra debuffs in their kit, especially Cyrus himself, so you can definitely run a Cyrus Ramses with like 5 or 6 marches. Is it going to get hectic trades? Definitely not. I mean, it's a very outdated march. It was used back in like 2019 or 2020, so nowadays it's not as good as it used to be, but it is probably one of Ramses' better pairings, considering it can be utilized with bigger murder balls rather than just picking the meta commanders. So if you really want the best thing, you'd probably go Zulang or Boudica, but in terms of utility, you can definitely use that Cyrus with Ramses. But once again, 5 or so Archer Marches is when you'd really consider it. In terms of Ramses' talent trees, I mean, Ramses' talents are a little bit trash, if we're being fully honest. Ramses is not a good primary commander, purely because he has the attack tree. I mean, the attack tree is horrible. No one should really be running the attack tree, and it's really just going to ruin your trades. But when you look at Ramses, he's running the attack tree, so if you had to pick a talent build, I'd probably go something like this. You go all in on the Archer tree, wish there was more points there, but you really can't get anything else in here. You're going to go full in on Razor Sharp, you're going to go full in on Full Quiver, all the way up to Whistling Arrows, and then you just put your points where you can get a little bit more value. So for example, Fight to the Death, I say it's worth it. Taking 3% more all damage but dealing 6% is relatively decent. If you find that you're getting crushed a lot on the open field in terms of just taking a ton of damage, you can switch this up and maybe cut this skill out and just put 3 points like into here for a little bit of attack, or 3 points here for a little bit of defense. But really, I'd say that Fight to the Death is worth it, especially if you're running him with an AoE. So if you end up running Ramses Zulang for whatever reason, Fight to the Death is definitely worth it. Other than that, all these are really just giving you attack or a little bit of rage, and that's pretty much as far as this like skill tree goes. There's nothing too amazing in here. Most of the stats in the attack tree are kind of low, if we're being fully honest. And other than that, this is probably his best build. There isn't really anything else you could do. There is this one here where I go a bit into versatility, but I'm not doing Razor Sharp. So honestly, the only real good build is this one. The other ones just don't really do as well, just because the attack tree is pretty bad. There's definitely no reason maxing it. And then the versatility is useless. And then the only thing that's good is the Archer tree. So maxing Archer tree and then going attack tree is your best route. Like I said though, Ramses wouldn't be a primary in pretty much any of his marches. Zulang would be the primary in Ramses Zulang. Boudica would be the primary in Boudica with Ramses. Cyrus is the primary with Cyrus Ramses. Herman would probably have to be the primary if you run him with Ramses. Same thing with Eshurbanipal. And then even same thing with Henry, to be honest. So when we look at it, Ramses, he isn't a primary commander, and if you're looking to make him a primary, I definitely wouldn't recommend it, especially in this meta. Now, as a final note before we discuss Ramses' investment potential, you can actually get him from the daily special offer, so that is definitely a good way to get a few of his heads if anyone's looking to get some Ramsey heads, maybe to upgrade that third skill. So he is available in the daily special offer. I'm pretty sure I should make that known. And he's also a Wheel of Fortune commander, so he's pretty easy to acquire. If you do want to get a few Ramsey heads, he's quite easy to do that on. And just getting him out of the daily special offer is definitely a good way for people who are willing to spend money if you are going to go into a Siege of Orleans KVK, because you can just pick up that third skill, and boom, you've got one of the best archer skills that is really out there, to be honest. Even in the current meta, this skill is still very decent, 30% skill damage reduction, top notch, and then that trigger of the march speed whenever you get attacked can be really, really amazing. So this is where you'd really get access to him. I wouldn't recommend spinning the wheel for him or spinning the wheel for him, but there is also the Legendary Tavern. He is also available in there. So if you're looking to get Ramses, he's available, Legendary Tavern, Daily Special Offer, and Wheel of Fortune, and that's probably going to be the best way to actually access him, just because Daily Special Offer is really no actual in-game stuff spent, it is real money spent. So if you're looking to weigh it out a little bit, pick him up on the daily special offer. You're going to have a pretty decent time if you can use that third skill in another KVK. So now the final question with Ramses is that, is he a good investment? Is Ramses a decent investment? Is he a bad investment? Should you even consider him? The answer is he's not a very good investment. I'm pretty sure I made that quite known throughout the video today. He's old, very, very old. I mean, I unlocked him 2 years ago, and I started playing like 3 or so years ago. He released when I started playing. I remember Chiskel spinning the Wheel of Fortune for him, and I think he was spinning it on his mini account, if that. So Ramses definitely he's not a new dog to the game. I can say that pretty confidently, and that means I just wouldn't really invest in him. Besides his third skill for Siege of Orleans, he just isn't good. He's just not a very good commander in the current meta. He quite literally just does not trade well. There is nothing in the future to really suggest he's going to be an OP commander, and especially with the release of more museum relics, we could see him come back into the meta, but until then I definitely wouldn't invest in him, and even after the relic I probably wouldn't, since museum relics only make commanders good for 2 to 3 months after if they're an amazing relic. If they're not, the commander isn't even going to be good after the relic. So Ramses, only time I'd ever even consider investing in him is if that relic is extremely overpowered. If they give him 300% health and 5 million extra damage factor, then I'd expertise him day one. But if he isn't at that level, ignore him. He probably isn't a commander you want to invest in, and he's definitely a trap I've seen a few players fall into. A lot of people comment, I invested in Ramses because someone told me he was good, or his kit looked nice, or I thought he was a newer commander. What should I do? And I pretty much just say something along the lines of, that's a very big L. I'm not sure what you could do. Maybe just ignore him and invest in some of the new Archer commanders. And a lot of older accounts who've just started playing again say I've got Ramses and YSG. Is that March still good? And the answers are really no. Ramses isn't a good commander nowadays. Not a good investment, and definitely nowhere near as strong as he used to be. Maybe we see the rise of Ramses, but only if he gets an overpowered relic, which honestly I have my doubts. Now, if you enjoyed today's video, I just want to ask you guys to please consider subscribing to the channel. I try to pump out a video at least once every 2 days, sometimes once every 3, depending on how busy I am. And when I'm not sick, I promise my voice sounds much, much better than this. So if you're interested in proper Archer content, I'm trying to remake all my older Archer guides. Do consider subscribing to the channel. I am definitely one of the best channels for any Archer related stuff. I've got groundbreaking equipment guides that change the whole entire Archer meta. I've got every single commander guide. I do tests for commanders when they're about to release. And I also upload infantry, cavalry, every single troop type. So if you're interested in videos like that, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It heavily supports me, and I do greatly appreciate it. To everyone who has already subscribed, a massive thank you. And to everybody who just subscribed, an even bigger thank you to you. Now, I just want to say, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.